Good day, everybody. I hope you're doing swell. You are hearing the voice of Robinette Cross. I am, of course, the founder of Cross Cultural Talks LLC, but I am also your group leader. I am the organizer of our trip, and I am so excited for us to go to South Africa and Mozambique in December. This is the first of several videos to help you get ready for our trip to South Africa and Mozambique. Is anyone else excited as I am? Okay, just making sure. This video is meant to provide you with a brief history and some geographical information about both of those countries. Please feel free to watch some or all of the video now. You can go back and watch more later, but please make sure that you let me know if you have any questions. Let's get started. As you may know, Africa is the second largest continent in the world. It has 54 countries that are members of the United Nations and 55 nation states that represent all of the countries on the continent. It has more than 1.37 billion inhabitants who speak more than 3,000 languages. South Africa, or the Republic of South Africa, is located at the southern tip of the African continent, bordered by the Atlantic Ocean to the west and the Indian Ocean to the east. It shares land borders with Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Eswatini, which is formerly known as Swaziland, and completely encloses the independent kingdom of Lesotho. South Africa has a population of almost 60 million people, with about 82% of them being Black, 8% are colored, 7% are white, 3% Asian, and less than 1% of other racial and ethnic backgrounds. There are 11 official languages. It also has 9 regions to include the Eastern Cape, Free State, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Northern Cape, Northwest, and Western Cape. And so what you see these arrows, I made some arrows to just show you some of the cities where we are going to go in South Africa. So you see Pretoria, Johannesburg, and Cape Town. Those are the 3 capital cities. South Africa is one of the unique countries that has more than one capital. So we are going to make sure that we hit all 3 of those capital cities, starting in Johannesburg, going up to Pretoria, then we're going over to Maputo in Mozambique, and then we're flying back down to Cape Town. So we're going to make sure that we hit all those cities. The indigenous peoples in South Africa are a combined language group called the Khoisan. The 2 groups are the San and the Khoikhoi. They are still very much in existence in South Africa. They're actually in the Southern African region and are hunter-gatherers. They are primarily found in the Northern and Western Cape and have been reported to have been there for as long as 260,000 years. The second group to migrate to South Africa were called the Bantu speakers, believed to have arrived as early as 300 BCE in KwaZulu-Natal. Bantu denotes a group of languages from the Niger-Congo or the Niger-Congo regions and includes such language groups as Zulu and Xhosa. So who you see in this image here are the Zulu. It's a group of Zulu on the top left. And then these are Xhosa down at the bottom. And then, of course, the former president, the first president of an independent South Africa, elected in 1994, Nelson Mandela. It is also home to Africa's Big Five, the 5 largest and or fastest land animals, to include elephants, buffalo, rhinoceros, lions, and leopards. There are a number of reservations for these large animals to protect their habitats. And we will visit one of them called Big Five that's not far from Cape Town. So the other images that you see to the top right and the bottom left, those are images from the Big Five. It's a beautiful resort reservation that has hundreds of acres of land for each of these different types. And of course, they have giraffes and they have zebra, they have all kinds of other animals, but they certainly are home to the Big Five. Mozambique is also located in Southern Africa, directly across from Madagascar. It is about 3 times the size of Great Britain and shares a border with 6 other countries: Tanzania, Malawi, and Zambia to the north, Zimbabwe to the west, and South Africa and Eswatini to the south. Mozambique is over 2,000 years old. The Bantu people migrated and set up an empire in the center and south of the country. Historically, it traded gold with places like China, India, and the Arab world. Mozambique currently has about 32.9 million inhabitants and one overall official language of Portuguese. There is a vast low grassland plateau in Mozambique. It has mountains as well as 25 rivers. The largest and mightiest of those rivers is the Great Zambezi. Mozambique has a number of natural resources to include, as I mentioned, gold, emeralds, copper, iron ore, and it is currently engaged in exploring for oil. Now, I included on this image or on this slide in the arrows, this is where a large part of the population is around. So that's in the Maputo area as well in Mozambique. But the Zambezi is a mighty river, and it goes, as you noticed, all the way from Congo, goes through Zambia, goes through Zimbabwe and Malawi, and ends up in Mozambique, going into the Mozambique Channel. And so the right-hand side is also the Zambezi River. I'm sorry, the Zambezi Bridge, and that's also in Mozambique. So I just wanted to make sure that you saw what the map looks like, and you also get to see what it looks like to be there, to have people and over that body of water. Mozambique is also home to Africa's Big Five, and it also has safari parks. We will not visit the safari parks there, but it does have safari parks as well. While Portuguese is the official language, most of the population in Mozambique is at the bare minimum bilingual, with over 16 ethnic languages. So Portuguese is often the second or third language. It is an urban language for sure, and especially among the urban youth. Some of the urban youth oftentimes use it as their primary language of communication, their lingua franca, but they begin to learn Portuguese as early as 5 years old. But their mother language is whatever ethnicity that language belongs to. Some of the other Bantu languages that are spoken in Mozambique include Kiswahili, Tsonga, and Nguni. While the Southern African peoples were living according to kingdoms and ethnicities, things took a very interesting turn in the region and across the continent in the 15th century with the arrival of Europeans. As you may remember, the 15th century marked the European age of exploration, with several European countries such as the Spanish, the British, the French, the Dutch, and the Portuguese vying for imperial influence around the world, setting sail for riches and glory in India and beyond. The Portuguese were originally exceptional explorers, and led by Vasco da Gama in 1498, they rounded the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa and came along the coast of Mozambique through the Channel of Mozambique to finally reach India. This original trip sparked the Portuguese interest in Mozambique, and they were determined to return. If you look at this golden arrow to the bottom of the screen, you'll see the exploration of Vasco da Gama. It wasn't until we get to Cabral that that there is a presence in South Africa, but Vasco da Gama rounds the Cape of Good Hope, goes through the Channel of Madagascar to reach Calicut in India. And when he was going through the Channel of Madagascar, is when he saw Madagascar, told the other Portuguese about it. And then on his next trip, there was some stoppage there. Then they go on to colonize later, a few years later. The Portuguese began their colonization of Mozambique in 1505, and that lasted over 400 years, exploiting natural resources and human beings as a part of the slave trade. South Africa was doubly colonized. It was colonized once in the 17th century by the Dutch, and then the Dutch, who were in South Africa, who became known as the Boers, and all the rest of South Africa were subsequently colonized in the 19th century by the British. The story of colonization in these two countries and how they impacted life and development will be the focus of our next session. Until then, thank you so much for allowing me to share some of the history of South Africa and Mozambique with you. Again, please let me know if you have any questions. Let's get ready to soar in December.